give them a perfect bit to illustrate on the cover. A completely naked woman with a thin covering of water and maybe a bar of soap or a rubber duck or a bloodstain to get her past the senses, floating with her hair spread out on the water, the cold purity of the bathtub surrounding her body, chaste as ice only because dead, her open eyes staring up into those of the reader, the bathtub as a coffin. All at once she was afraid that she was dissolving, coming apart layer by layer like a piece of cardboard in a gutter puddle. After a while, I noticed with mild curiosity that a large drop of something wet had materialized on the table near my hand. I poked it with my finger and smudged it around a little before I realized with horror that it was a tear. I must be crying then. Something inside me started to dash about in dithering mazes of panic, as though I had swallowed a tadpole. I was running along the sidewalk. After the first minute, I was surprised to find my feet moving, wondering how they had begun, but I didn't stop. Marion had spent the afternoon at the hairdresser's. They treated your head like a cake, something to be carefully iced and ornamented. She looked sideways down the assembly line of women seated in identical mauve chairs under identical wearing mushroom-shaped machines. All that was visible was a row of strange creatures with legs of various shapes and hands that held magazines and heads that were metal domes. An electric mushroom. I'd prefer to be fed through the main artery. If only I knew the right people, I'm sure it could be arranged. I really should have eaten something, she said to herself. It's bad to drink on an empty stomach. Somewhere in front of me, a self was waiting, pre-formed. She took another vitamin pill. I wonder what they grind up to put in these things. I thought of my signature going into a file, and the file going into a cabinet, and the cabinet being shut away in a vault somewhere and locked. The trouble with you is, you're just rejecting your femininity. I must have been thinking of myself as plural. The waitress came. Millie ordered steak and kidney pie, a good substantial lunch. Emmy chose a salad with cottage cheese to go with her 3 kinds of pills, the pink, the white, and the orange, which were lined up on the table beside her water glass. Lucy fussed and fretted and changed her mind several times and finally asked for an omelette. Marion was surprised at herself. She had been dying to go for lunch. She had been starving, and now she wasn't even hungry. She had a cheese sandwich. She turned and saw herself reflected in the full-length mirror on the back of the cupboard door. She turned her head and examined her profile out of the corner of her eye. The difficulty was that she couldn't grasp the total effect. She was only able to see one thing at a time. What was it that lay beneath the surface these pieces were floating on, holding them all together? She held both of her naked arms out towards the mirror. They were the only portion of her flesh that was without a cloth or nylon, or leather, or varnish covering. But in the glass, even they looked fake, like soft pinkish-white rubber, or plastic, boneless, flexible. The waiter stepped forward from somewhere, soft and deft as a cat on the carpeted floor, and set her order before her, the fillet on a wooden platter, oozing juicily within its perimeter of bacon. She began slicing and chewing, conveying the food to her grateful stomach. Once on a streetcar, she had seen a mother bite a small child because it had bitten her. She gnawed thoughtfully through a tough piece and swallowed. She looked down at her own half-eaten steak and suddenly saw it as a hunk of muscle, blood red, part of a real cow that once moved and ate and was killed. But now it was suddenly there in front of her, with no intervening paper. It was flesh and blood, rare, and she had been devouring it, gorging herself on it. She went to the sink and peered in. It was full of unwashed dishes, stacks of plates, glasses half filled with organic-looking water, bowls with vestiges of things that had ceased to be recognizable. There was a saucepan that had once held macaroni and cheese. Its inner surface was spotted with bluish mould. A glass dessert dish was sitting in the puddle of water. At the bottom of the pot was filmed over with a grey, slippery-looking growth reminiscent of algae in ponds. The cups were in there too, all of them, standing one inside another, ringed with dregs of tea and coffee and scums of cream. Even the white porcelain surface of the sink had developed a skin of brown. She did not want to disturb anything for fear of discovering what was going on out of sight. She got out 2 plates and 2 forks and 2 paper napkins. Then she cut into the cake. She was surprised to find that it was pink in the inside too. She put a forkful into her mouth and chewed it slowly. It felt spongy and cellular against her tongue, like the bursting of thousands of tiny lungs. It was like that parlour trick that they used to play with eggs. You put the egg endwise between your locked hands and squeezed it with all your might, and the egg wouldn't break. It was so well balanced that you were exerting your force against yourself. But with only a slight shift, an angle, a readjustment of the pressure, the egg would crack, and scoosh, there you were, with your shoes full of albumin. The next morning, however, when she opened her soft-boiled egg and saw the yolk looking up at her with its one significant and accusing yellow eye, she found her mouth closing together like a frightened sea anemone. It's living, it's alive, the muscles in her throat said, and tightened. She pushed the dish away. Her conscious mind was used to the procedure by now. She sighed with resignation and crossed one more item off the list. She was watching her own hands and the peeler and the curl of crisp orange skin. She became aware of the carrot. It's a root, she thought. It grows in the ground and sends up leaves. Then they come along and dig it up. Maybe it even makes a sound. A scream, too low for us to hear. But it doesn't die right away. It keeps on living. Right now it's still alive. She thought she felt it twist in her hands. She dropped it on the table. My mind was as empty as though someone had scooped out the inside of my skull like a cantaloupe and left me only the rind to think with. She sensed her face as vastly spreading and papery and slightly dilapidated, a huge billboard smile, peeling away in flaps and patches, the metal surface beneath showing through. She sensed her face as vastly spreading and papery and slightly dilapidated, a huge billboard smile, peeling away in flaps and patches, the metal surface beneath showing through. The spongy cake was pliable, easy to mould. She scooped out part of it and made a head with the section she had taken out. Then she nipped in a waist at the sides. Now she had a blank white body. It looked slightly obscene, lying there, soft and sugary and featureless on the platter. In a burst of exuberance, she added a row of ruffles around the neckline and more ruffles at the hem of the dress. She made a smiling, lush-lipped pink mouth and pink shoes to match. Finally, she put 5 pink fingernails on each of the amorphous hands. The hair took longer. It involved masses of intricate Baroque scrolls and swirls, piled high on the head and spilling down over the shoulders. Now there were only the globular silver decorations to add. One went in each eye for a pupil. The image was complete. Her creation gazed up at her, its face doll-like and vacant, except for the small silver glitter of intelligence in each green eye. Enigmatic, mocking, succulent. She considered the first mouthful. It seemed odd, but most pleasant, to be actually tasting and chewing and swallowing again. She plunged her fork into the carcass, neatly severing the body from the head. I had half the torso and the head left over. I got him a fork and took the remains of the cadaver down from the shelf where I had put it. I sat watching the cake disappear, the smiling pink mouth first, then the nose, and then one eye. For a moment, there was nothing left of the face but the last green eye. Then it too vanished, like a wink. He started devouring the hair. He scraped the last chocolate curl up with his fork and pushed away the plate. "Thank you," he said, licking his lips. It was delicious.
If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked the cake, baked the cake, baked the cake. If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked the cake. How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? Had you dropped me a letter, I'd have hired a band, grandest band in the land. Had you dropped me a letter, I'd have hired a band, spread the welcome mat for you. Oh, I don't know where you came from, 'cause I don't know where you've been, but it really doesn't matter. Grab a chair and fill your platter and dig, dig, dig right in. If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked the cake, hired a band. Goodness sake, if I knew you were coming, I'd have baked the cake. How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? How'd you do?